Joining us now here on the Bear Report podcast, we've got a special guest. You guys may know him. I certainly know him, but he's an Illinois native. We've got former NFL tight end Clay Harbor in the house. You can follow him on Twitter at ClayHarbs82. He was at Hallis Hall this past week covering Bears camp. Had the first of two padded practices that Clay got the opportunity to watch. But Clay, how's it going? Thanks so much for jumping on here.
I appreciate you having me. I love talking Bears. I'm a lifelong Bears fan, and obviously, my time in the NFL, always stayed up with the Bears, and afterwards as a fan. So thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. I mean, let's just get right into it, because for those of us that cover the team, and I'm a lifelong Bears fan too. I mean, just what are your general thoughts and observations regarding the Bears this offseason? There's an entire regime change. Khalil Mack's gone, Akeem Hicks is gone, a couple faces of the team now playing elsewhere. But, you were there for 2 days at camp with the pads on. What'd you see?
I think they're trending in the right direction. So that's what I see. I see a team that's obviously been through a lot, but they're trending in the right direction. Got a young quarterback with a ton of talent. Obviously, you want to put more talent around him, but I think Poles and Eberflus are heading in the right direction. I think they're putting together an offensive line that's turning out to be decent. I think they're going to be better than they were last year there. I think as the tight end group as a whole is great. It's one of the best tight end groups they've had in the past several years. Obviously, the receivers, you got Mooney. And, that's one of the positions that has been getting a lot of attention. You don't know what happens after Mooney, who's going to step up, who's going to play. But I think there are some guys under the radar that have some talent there. So overall, I think that this team could surprise some people this year. I do think it could be a little bit of a rebuilding year, but I think they're heading in the right direction.
So I have to ask you this. Just what sticks out regarding this coaching staff? Because the handful of days that I've been at practice, I've seen Matt Eberflus right there in the middle of the action. I mean, it seems like this staff is taking a crazy hands-on approach that a lot of Bears fans and even members of the media like myself are not really accustomed to seeing.
Yeah, I like it. He's doing some good things at practice. And the first thing I noticed when I was over at Hallis Hall was there's a lot of energy here. The energy at the practice, you got the music, the guys are moving quick. And it was high tempo. They're going to be in shape. That's something they're doing. He's getting them from drill to drill. They're working. There's not much time in between drills. So he's getting these guys in shape. And I think overall, there's a ton of energy. He's doing a good job there. He's doing a good job getting them from drill to drill and getting a lot of reps in.
You had a tweet recently talking about Dallas Goedert, who I love, by the way, as a player, as well as tight end Cole Kmet. But just what sticks out to you regarding Cole's play style? I recently had a story on how Luke Getsy thinks that Cole Kmet's going to take another step forward, but Cole's clearly got big expectations for himself, it seems like.
Man, this guy, I didn't realize. So I was there at Hallis Hall and I have friends on the team. So just getting on the field afterwards and talking to the players, and then I turn around and Cole Kmet's behind me. I go, man, this guy is a monster. I didn't know how big this dude was. He's probably 6'6", 6'7", 265 pounds. Is this Paul Bunyan? Where'd this guy come from? But he's a massive guy that can run and move. So that's the surprising thing is, as a tight end, usually you see a big dude, you see a small guy. The smaller guys are more quick, and the big guy uses his body more. Kmet's a guy that does both. He's big and fast and quick. He's got a skill set that you don't see much for tight ends. He should have a really big year this year. I think there's some things he still needs to work on. This is me just nitpicking because I've played with some really good tight ends. If he wants to be in that top 10 level of tight end, he's going to have to work on his releases and his routes a little bit, but he's got all the tools to be that guy, to be one of the best tight ends in the league. And I think this year he will have a great year. And people are saying he never produced. He didn't score many touchdowns. He's got to get better in the red zone. He's got to get better getting off of press coverage. But he did have 60 catches and over 600 yards last year. So the guy has shown that he can produce on Sundays. And it's one of the guys that have me really excited about this Bears team this year. I think that they could, overachieve on expectations.
So part of you answering that question, kind of, you said that Cole Kmet has a skill set that not a lot of tight ends have. What exactly do you mean by that? Because for the casual NFL fan, I think that the definition of a really good tight end is a big body player that has really great route running, but also has really good hands as well as size. And then the biggest thing of all is just breakaway speed. And guys like that include Travis Kelce, George Kittle, even I would say Kyle Pitts.
Yeah, so there's different style tight ends. The reason I like Kmet is he reminds me a little bit of like Martellus Bennett, Rob Gronkowski, guys like that, because he's a blocker too. Kmet can block. So a lot of times you got a guy like Travis Kelce. If he's on the line of scrimmage, you're not going to run the ball to Travis Kelce. You're not going to run to the strength because he's not going to be able to block a defensive end. Most of the time you're running, use him as backside cutoff. You might use a zone scheme to where you're sifting him to block the backside end, or he's arcing to block a cornerback. But Cole Kmet's a guy that can block a defensive end. He's a guy that can do that, and that's what impresses me and why I like him. That opens up things in the pass game. You're not cutting off one side of the field as far as in the run game. You can do play action pass either side of the field. The thing that he does well is he's a blocker as well as he can run, and he is the big body, which is hard to find. A guy like Kelce he's the best receiving tight end in NFL history, in my opinion, but he's not going to block anybody. And he doesn't have to because he's so successful at doing what he does. He can cut someone off backside and he's gonna catch. He's gonna have 100 yards in a game. So I mean, Kmet can do everything. He's an all-encompassing, do-it-all tight end, and that's what I respect about him. The fact that he can block, he can run, he's fast, he's quick, and he's got the big body.
That's some really good insight right there. And, I'm a big Cole Kmet believer too. I thought he was going to take another step forward last year, and I think he did. But this year, I think is a lot of people are going to see he's going to fulfill that expectation of being a second round pick and even more for the Bears. But you also had another tweet, and I feel like Bears fans kind of took this one out of proportion because you talked about how Jalen Hurts was ahead of Justin Fields, and a lot of people kind of looked at it and said, well, Clay's just, bashing Justin Fields. But I think it was the exact opposite, where you were kind of saying, hey, Jalen's done phenomenal so far, but Justin can still be a phenomenal quarterback for this team. But just what did you see from Justin, whether it was last year as well as at camp, that makes you think, hey, this guy's going to take another step forward, and there's no doubt about it?
So Justin Fields, you can tell he's just got so much raw ability, the arm strength, the athletic ability. This guy can run a 4.4 40, and he's just got this presence about him that exudes confidence, and you respect that. It's tough for him because I don't think his play style suits some of these practices like this. He's not a guy that's going to take 5 steps back, get the ball out quick on time. He's not a guy that's going to take the 7-step drop, get the back ball out right quick on time. If Trevor Siemian's late throwing a pass, a 5-step drop, a 7-step drop, that's very concerning. The thing about Justin Fields is he's a different style quarterback. He can run, he can scramble, he can create more time. You see a guy like Patrick Mahomes, how many times does he scramble, keep his eyes downfield, and that's when he completes a pass. What I saw was Justin Fields wasn't as accurate as I'd hoped on some plays. He'd make a great throw, and he'd come back and he'd be a little off, or he would be a little late getting rid of the ball. So I wanted to see him be quicker. I think he's got all the talent. He did impress me in certain areas, but he does have some things that he has to work on. But you realize that this guy, this is his first time being the starting quarterback coming into the season. Last year, he didn't even think he was going to play. He had Andy Dalton and Nick Foles ahead of him. It wasn't his team. He wasn't a leader. So it's tough. And Jalen Hurts has A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert has tons of weapons. And seeing Jalen Hurts play, wow, this guy's actually very impressive. I hear the media criticizing him. But what I saw, the 2 practices I was at, Jalen Hurts looked like he's ready to take a huge leap forward this year. He obviously has arguably the best offensive line in the league, has the best running game in the league. It's himself included with the zone read scheme that he's doing very well at. Had a couple of big runs yesterday's practice I was at. But he's also getting the ball out on time and getting the ball to his number one guy, A.J. Brown, which makes things a lot easier. You got a guy like A.J. Brown. So it's different. You're comparing apples to oranges here. It's not apples to apples because they're different style players. But in my opinion, yes, Jalen Hurts is ahead of Justin Fields as well. He should be. He's got the better roster right now, and he's a year older.
Yeah, that's some really good insight. I think when people kind of look at the reset that the Bears had this year, part of that was also just a total reset for Justin Fields, who I think had the biggest reset of anyone at Hallis Hall. And so it's going to take time, but just as the old adage that goes with us Bears fans, every time there's a regime change, it's just go ahead and just be patient with anything and everything, because the results hopefully will come this time. But what about the offensive line? Because the Bears have some veteran talent like a Michael Schofield and a Riley Reif and Cody Whitehair. And then there's some young emerging talent like Braxton Jones. But everyone right now is kind of just using the wait and see approach with the Bears O-line, I think, including the coaching staff. But do you think that at some point the Bears kind of have to stop subbing guys in and out on the O-line and say, you know what, this is the starting five we're going to go with, because this is what we've seen through the first 2 to 3 weeks of camp, because we want you guys to be ready to go for the regular season?
Yeah, no, I think that's I think the O-line, you want to start getting there by the time you're getting to the first preseason game. First, second preseason game, have your starting five so you guys can start to get some continuity there. You're getting used to the guy that's going to be making calls with you. You're going to get used to the guy that you're combination blocking with and just see his style, know how he does things, know how he makes calls, and get used to that and have some time together as a unit. It's tough because you have some injuries. I know Lucas Patrick is out. Everybody's got him penciled in as a starting center. I love the Michael Schofield signing, and I love the Riley Reif signing. You need some veterans on that team. Those guys are vets. They've been in this league for years. They've played for years. They're not going to get dominated. Their guys got pride. They will not let this line be a bad offensive line. Tevin Jenkins is back now. I think. I mean, it's been a saga there, but I think he's going to have a big season this year. He knows that his career is in jeopardy if he doesn't. And Kobe Whitehair, Braxton Jones, where do they fit? I think you got some talent here. And then young guys, Doug Kramer, Larry Borum. I think it's an interesting group, and I think this can be a group that actually does some good things. So I'm excited to see how they're playing come, the preseason game. And I'm going to be at practice Wednesday and Thursday, and I have been watching more of the tight ends and receivers, but I want to make sure that I take a look at this old line on Wednesday and Thursday more as well.
So let me ask you this. Being a former tight end, did you just always feel more comfortable throughout training camp when you knew that, hey, the offensive line next to me was going to be solidified and it was kind of these starting five guys because it kind of made your job easier?
For me personally, I liked to know which tackles I was going to go with. So that was where it went for me. And I think obviously each player is going to have that feeling. You get used to a guy next to you. You end up building this chemistry. You know what kind of calls you're going to make. You know if you're going to have to take the lead on the call or if he is. You guys got to make sure you're seeing the thing the same way. Okay, point out the middle linebacker. There's the mic point. Okay, we got one over from the mic. 66. And then you want to get to a point to where you don't have to make a call, because when you make a call, the defense is going to know what you're doing. You're combination blocking to this guy. So it does take some time to develop some of that continuity to make yourselves the best version of an offensive line. It's not like you can just send, 5 best offensive linemen out there one day and they're just going to have the best offensive line. No, it takes time to know each other and know how each other play, know how each other combo block, know how this guy pulls, is he going to get depth, things like that.
How about the Bears rookie class? Because this is, I think, a group that a lot of people have loved so far. You've got your 2 DBs in Kyler Gordon and Jaquan Brisker. You've got the wide receiver Velus Jones Jr. A lot of people have fell in love with him, and he's developing a chemistry with Justin Fields. But then I think what's forgotten is Dominique Robinson, the pass rusher the Bears took in the 5th round. I mean, he's been so impressive in training camp so far. And then people don't seem to be giving enough love to the 6th round pick running back Treston Ebner, who I like to call him a Swiss Army knife because he can pretty much play all over the place. But just What have you loved about the rookie class so far?
I think all of them are actually are doing a pretty good job. Obviously, you got the top guys, but even a guy like Ebner, Zachary Thomas, Braxton Jones, you get lower down there. You had Doug Kramer, guys that aren't getting as many reps but are still performing. I think this is a good deep class, and I think Poles did a good job. And I think the safeties are performing. When I was there, I was paying more attention to the offense, but I like Kyler Gordon. I like Brisker. I think both those guys are going to have big futures in this league. And Willis Jones, I think he's quick. He's explosive. He might need to work on his hands a little bit. He dropped a few balls in individual drills. I'm not going to completely write him off and say the guy can't catch, but you don't like to see that. He's got to improve on that with a guy with his quickness and route running ability. Got to be able to catch football. So I want to see him, improve that a little more, but I think he'll be a great return man, punt return man, kickoff return man. And, Braxton Jones has been getting some good praise too. He's getting in a lot of reps with the ones, and, he's not getting dominated at all. So I think that's a guy that could have a good future with the Bears.
I have to ask you more about a player like Jaquan Brisker. You playing tight end, I know for a fact you saw a lot of safeties kind of covering you. Now, for a player like Jaquan Brisker, I mean, he's the prototypical NFL safety. He's got size, he's got speed, he's athletic, he's fast, he plays physical. But how would you go about as a tight end just kind of game planning for a player like that each week, knowing that you constantly saw him pop up covering tight ends on film?
Yeah, you have to look and see, what his strengths are. Are you gonna have to use some quick release moves? You're gonna have to shake him a little bit, or can you use strength? And I think he's a tough guy because he's strong and he's quick. So I mean, that's a guy that you have to come and you have to have a plan exactly for how you're going to release against him. You watch the other tight ends that have played against some receivers, and you see how they're successful. Can they beat him with speed? Can they beat him with strength? Can they beat him with quickness? They have to give him a little move, and then you make your plan from there. But a guy that doesn't have either weakness, right, that's very evident. You can't tell off the bat that this he's a little smaller, so I'm going to use my strength. Okay, he's a little bigger, his feet are a little bit slow, so I'm going to try to use my speed. So he's gonna cause some matchup problems for sure.
Let's switch over to the defensive side of the ball. Obviously, the pride and joy of the Bears, but Alan Williams has come in. He's had a lot of really good things to say. I mean, the defense has been lights out, I like to say, in camp so far, because they do have some veteran experience on that side of the ball. But what excites you about the defensive side of the ball? And is there any player in particular that you're keeping your eye on throughout the season?
No, I think I like this. I like this defense. There's not a lot of big name guys. Obviously you got Robert Quinn, but besides that, there's not a ton of big name guys. You got Roquan that's hoping for his new contract, but I think it's a big group of guys that are fast, they're quick, they're going to run to the ball, they're going to play hard, and that's what I like to see as a player. And I think obviously you got Roquan, but adding Kyler Gordon, then you got Jalen Johnson, you got Brisker, who looks like he's going to start. You got Eddie Jackson, I like him. Duke Shelley and Tavon Young were playing well. I saw Tavon Young the first day I was at practice was guarding Mooney very well. I was like, wow, this guy's literally staying right with Mooney. I mean, that's a tough task for anybody. So I'm actually excited. I know it was tough for some of these guys. Last year in this defense, and our cornerbacks and safety unit weren't good. But I think a lot of it had to do with the defensive scheme. I think that they gave up they had the worst quarterback passer rating against them. The quarterback passers were over 100, the passer rating with the least amount of interceptions. So I think this year, this defense, the secondary will do a lot better.
I'm particularly excited for the secondary just because of the additions of Gordon and Brisker. I mean, the Bears kind of rebuilt the entire unit overnight, just adding 2 really good draft picks. And I'm one of those people that's a firm believer that had there not been that run on wide receivers and offensive linemen in that back half of the first round, you probably would have seen Gordon and Brisker taken as first round picks. So really phenomenal talents right there. But, in terms of the defense, right? How do you think this defensive line is going to do? Because it's completely new faces, but you do have players like a Travis Gibson, a Robert Quinn, a Justin Jones, three, I think, players that have stood out in camp so far, but have also played in a 4-3 defense before.
Yeah, I think it's a good mix. I think it's a good mix of guys that have been there and new guys. And that's what you want. You want some veterans, you want some young guys, because the veterans will, make sure that everything is still moving forward. And a young guy, they might not have as much experience to draw on as how to do things right. So I like the fact that they kept Quinn. I know there was a lot of questions if they're going to trade Quinn. Obviously getting rid of Khalil Mack, Quinn's next, but I like the fact that he kept him to keep that centerpiece, that veteran guy on the defensive line, and to really help lead this defense and these young guys. So I'm excited. It's going to be a great opportunity for a lot of these guys to show what they can do.
I know I'm going to be watching all of it closely too, but just what do you think this offense has to do to put it all together in 2022? Because my observations, I think, through the first couple of days of camp are the same as yours. You see some really good moments. You see some moments where you're like, okay, something's going to work here. They're going to get that specific play, that specific route concept clicking and working eventually. And then there's those moments where you're like, yeah, that didn't work. They probably shouldn't try that again.
Yeah, so I think that they got to get Montgomery the ball early and often whenever you start the real games and even preseason. And then obviously you get Herbert in there as well. I think you got to start off running the ball. Run the ball, play action pass, roll out with Justin Fields. I think you got to use 2 and 3 tight end sets. I think that the receiver unit isn't that great, but what they do have is an underrated tight end group. I think Cole Kmet's going to have a big year, but I also love Ryan Griffin, the 10-year vet. This guy can catch and he can block. You can get him on the field and he will produce. Then also you got James O'Shaughnessy. He's a guy that's 8-9-year vet. He can catch and he can block as well. You can get all three of these tight ends on the field with Mooney, and then you got Montgomery. I think that's a good unit. You can keep defenses off balance. So you got to switch personnel groupings a lot to keep the defense off balance. And I think that's something that this roster they can do with the tight ends they have.
I know it's certainly going to be so interesting kind of monitor, because when I look at this team, I say, okay, there's so much talent and potential that's just waiting to really go ahead and be developed. And the best part about all that is that there's so many young players on the roster that you have enough talent right now to really turn the Bears into a winning team for several years. But kind of getting away from the Bears here, I mean, I have to know just your NFL career. You were with a couple different teams. I mean, playing with, I think, a team like the Eagles, certainly an incredibly passionate fan base, but just was there a specific player or coach, I should say, throughout your football career that just has had a lasting impact on you to this day?
Yeah, I mean, Coach Reed was the coach that drafted me. I mean, he was a special guy, the way he goes about his business, and everybody loved him. He was a great impact, had a great impact on me. My tight end coach for Jacksonville under Gus Bradley, Gus Bradley was an awesome guy as well. The positivity he had was infectious. Rod Middleton, though, my tight end coach for Jacksonville, was a really awesome guy. Really enjoyed my time with him. He's one of my favorite coaches of all time, and he's with the Jets now. Also, Brian Dable. He's a head coach for the Giants. He was I only spent a short time with the Patriots, but he had a really big impact on me there. And I love Dable, and we still keep in touch to this day, even though he's the head coach. So great guy, and really do appreciate all of them.
Yeah, those, I mean, really phenomenal names, right? I love hearing guys like Brian Dable just get up to the podium and speak. But, take us through what you're doing now. Obviously, you're not on the gridiron every Sunday, but what's life post-football look like for you?
Yeah, right now I'm currently in school. I'm in Kelley School of Business. I'm working towards my MBA, my master's in business administration. And while I'm doing that, I am doing some football media stuff. I'm starting up my first actual paid podcast gig with the Jacob Media in Philadelphia when season starts. So I'm excited about that. I'm excited about exploring more of the sports world and just being an analyst in football. as well as I do a lot of fitness things. I'm a certified personal trainer and strength conditioning coach. I run a couple fitness classes as well.
Yeah, that sounds really fun. I think you're definitely going to enjoy doing sports media. Like one of the things with me is this is actually, so I coach freshman football at Mateo Valley High School here in Aurora.
Awesome.
And so it's my first year doing it, but I've just really enjoyed doing all of it so far. I think that a lot of people don't realize that when you're in kind of sports, it just has such a lasting impact, and that on you as an individual, because you're just helping so many different people, I feel like.
Absolutely. I'd love to come talk to the kids sometimes. If you ever need a guy, want to come talk to him, a little motivational speech, that'd be my pleasure.
Absolutely. Clay, this has been a pleasure. I mean, you're welcome back on the show at any time. I'm going to let you go now because I'm sure you have a lot of different things to do, but you have a great rest of your day and keep in touch. Let me know if you ever need anything.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. Love talking Bears. We'll have to do it again soon.
Absolutely. Yes, we will.